Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello everyone. So I'm just making this little video to tell you a bit about my story on this special day, as we could say, which I consider my Buddhist birthday versus the regular birthday. This is one of the main holiday in Buddhism that we call Dhammacakka, or the day of the turning of the wheel of Dhamma by the Buddha. As far as dates, the three other dates in Buddhist holiday is when the Buddha was born, enlightened, and died on that full moon 2 moons ago, around May. But then this full moon of July is when he gave his first speech after enlightenment, the first teaching of Dhamma. So, of course, for me, that is a main reason why I had to become a Dhamma vector, because I was born on that full moon night of July in Thai called Asalapucha or Waso in Myanmar. As much as I became aware early on that full moon time was very special every time, and becoming aware of the energies and energy shift around that time as the full moon is building up. So I was born on that night of July 7th to 8th, 1971, and that, depending where you are in the world, so that was the full moon night basically. But as we know in Buddhism, what you are in this life, at least at the beginning, the context you are born in, and the country, the family, everything, and the body that you get in, it all comes through karma from the previous lives. And the same as your personality and maybe what you are meant, how far you are meant to go or become aware on the path of Buddhism is linked to what we call the parami, the different qualities that you have developed on the Buddhist path already in your previous lives. And to make it just a little bit of a bio of my story, first also, as much as some people in Buddhism, even some monks or others, mean not to be aware of any significance of the number 7, and rather some other numbers. 7 is a very meaningful number in Buddhism too. And I was born on 7/7, so then born in France, just regular family, definitely not into Buddhism. I had the childhood that I had, again probably linked of course to the karma from previous life, but definitely early on felt different and not belonging in one way to this world, at least to this human society the way it was already, and really questioning a lot the behavior of humans in general, and exactly felt the sense of unfairness or injustice, how people were towards each other, not the right way basically. And that still also was enforced through the French culture, as most cultures in the world, and through my family, my parents' way of being and behaving with me. And early on, as most cultures want you getting into the school system to educate you again, which is all conditioning, to condition you or format you the way that culture wants, with certain values, but mostly certain way of conditioning to just believe and become obedient to what the authority tells you. Anyway, everything always felt not right to me, and since having to go to preschool and grade 1, all this systematization of things felt completely out of reality and definitely not natural, not connected or in harmony with nature, which is the way we should be as live beings, organic beings. So I was always wondering why and what I was doing in that system, or childhood jail, to have to go to school every day in a classroom listening to some figure of authority trying to educate you or teach you things, when for me I was aware that the real life was out there, and especially in nature, in natural environment, not in a city and not in a classroom. And basically, as I would say, at least for that whole first part of my life, and for of course some reason from my paramis, I was too aware, too young, and too aware for that system and society. So I was already rebelling, questioning, which was not allowed back then, of course. So then that would go back to John Lennon's quote about living in an insane world, and if you try to tell the truth of that insanity and describe it as insane to the general public or the authority, then they will trying to put you away for being insane yourself, just because you dare to question. But you see through the insanity of that. So anyway, I was one of those, and because of all that, I would say that I was pretty much depressed my whole childhood in general, and of course especially in the fall when the school year was starting, and as I became aware of the expression, I would call it wow, we are just entering that long tunnel, as the expression about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And for me, the light would be like in June, when it was the end of that school year, and just looking forward to the summer holidays out of that childhood jail. So it was that long tunnel of 10 months in that systematization that never felt right, so made me quite depressed, plus other things at home and everything. So, and then yeah, I was already actually contemplating suicide around 11, 12 years old, something like that, middle school. But then also because of the way I was, and I was anyway, everything is karma. So I was introduced to karate. So I started to practice karate in the spirit of martial arts. I was lucky, but it fitted me too that I didn't want a club that was about competition, of course. So I got a good club in a good, real original karate tradition with a great master, Oshima Sensei, who I've considered, until I started Vipassana, the most influential person in my life, who I met twice in my hometown and definitely impressed me. But as being a great international karate master, still very humble and approachable to a young kid like me who was 14, 15, and still would ask a question. But anyway, everything is energy, so it was mainly about energy. And yeah, he basically helped me like that, just by his kindness and humility and approachability given his level. So I was into that traditional karate club, and as being traditional, it was hard work, discipline, pushing the limits mentally and physically. And they give you a little pamphlet quickly explaining the story of martial arts, which in short is, as karate is Japan and is kind of the end of the line of martial arts into this area. If you trace it back, one major step is when it stemmed out of the famous Shaolin temple, Kung Fu in China, which was founded by some great master, monk, and goes back to Bodhidharma, very great Buddhist figure, teacher, where there's not much trace about him or his teachings, but and known to have crossed the Himalaya by foot, of course, from India to China, spent 9 years in a cave, and so of course became fully enlightened as an arahat, as a fully enlightened human beings. And so he would have been known as a Buddhist monk too, and then it goes back to Buddha. So when I was about that age, about 14 or 15, then I opened the book to figure out what is this Buddha, or what this is about, Buddhism. And just like it is known for people who have the very strong parami, from previous life, who have built a lot of strong qualities on the Buddhist path in their previous lives, then in the next life, or so in this life, there can be a little trigger at some point, and that will basically make that seed again to just start to germinate and grow. And depending on the strength and quality of the paramis, that can go fast or not, strong or not. But just like it happens for some, as soon as I read what Buddhism was about, and actually not a religion in the sense of the blind belief religion like most of the other ones, but the real teachings about real life values and answers to many existential questions, then at once everything got triggered in my mind, and I felt exactly like this is truth, this is the truth. So again, I will never go into debate, of course, with anyone who likes to debate, especially again with some words or some wordings of things, just like for the sake of debating or arguing. But what is truth? But that is the point of Buddhism too. Real Buddhism is practicing meditation properly, the right way, and get to a certain level, certain depth, where you will get all the answers in a way that also one Zen quote is known for, which is that you don't find per se so many answers, but you just drop the questions because you just understand from experiencing within. So it's not about getting so many kind of rational, specific, scientific answers, even though, as we say and mean, that the proper practice, especially Vipassana, is a very scientific, rational approach to realize our true nature and the nature of life, existence, everything. But at the end, you just understand from within, which is the main thing. And it's not about specific answers to satisfy the intellect like most people do. And that's why most of these people who like to argue and debate is just to satisfy their intellect and the ego-based intellect. But it's not about that, and that's why that will be another big topic. But and I have maybe some videos about that. I'm not getting along with the scientific community, and some scientists who approached me again to do some testing or asking me questions, because it goes back to lowering the level of satisfying some narrow minds who are just intellectualizing things at the very narrow level of looking at things and thinking that they know or have the means to understand and know, but they don't, at the same time as they don't actually make the effort to practice what we do to exactly figure out what they are looking for, but to figure out the proper way, which is to experience it from within yourself, instead of creating machines and technology to try to measure whatever things, and to measure things in other people's brain, and at their very narrow, simple mind level, trying to intellectualize the results from what they observe or what those machines measure or tell them, which will never be enough and never give this kind of answer, of course, because this is just metrics and data. And what they observe themselves, just like basically the modern psychology science has been doing by studying people. Yes, they make some stats and then draw conclusions and then categorize people and manage to create some drugs, some chemical drugs as usual, to try to counterbalance some things in the mind of people. But it's never the real thing of experiencing within yourself. Then you know exactly how it works, where it comes from. So then you really know properly, which is the proper knowledge. Anyway, so after I read that basic book in France outlining in general the principle of Buddhism and the values, then it was clear that this is truth. That gives me already enough answers. And I would say, like, I like to describe it like that many times, that I had that flame of life inside, it's energy of life, chi, ki, whatever, that was really dim, 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 dim. And then it got revived. And it got revived quite strongly. And so I decided at the time that I was basically a Buddhist. So as a 15 years old, around that time. And through the very serious, dedicated practice of karate that way, I developed that strong discipline, and I got already all the benefits which are also known to come with meditation. And suddenly my life turned around and everything improved. Every situation, every aspect of life improved and became quite positive in every way. School, family, activities, relationships, everything. So I definitely understood and knew all the benefits of that type of work, which is why in one way the word effort is very important in the practice. Though you have to have a motivation and to put the effort and to give it. At the time, I guess I was of course one of those people who have that mindset of, you know, nothing to lose and give it everything. So then I gave everything to the practice of karate, martial arts, the traditional way at the time, developing that mindset of I don't get to die anymore, right? So I've reached that point, and which is ultimately also the same mindset that helps you to reach enlightenment, exactly when you're ultimately not attached to anything as even to this, then you are ready and fully open-minded for whatever comes and the next level or higher levels. Before that, if you are still a bit attached to your body or your mind, that ego, of course you will never become enlightened. So yeah, and that goes with that famous expression in one way. And for some people who feel really down or think that life is really hard and they really go down, of course there's two options, and many times, I mean, some would commit suicide, like I was thinking about, and that is basically the wrong way, of course, even though many think that's the easiest solution, but that's the ultimate giving up. And that's okay, because many think that this life is just that. They don't know, they don't believe whatever in reincarnation, in multiple lives and stuff. So then it feels like the easy way out of this suffering. But as we know in Buddhism, from experience, again rationally and not in theory, not as a concept of philosophy, there's no concept of Buddhist philosophy actually, because everything is experience of that ultimate reality of existence. But so you will go through many lives, of course, many existences. But in one way, when some people say, oh, look, those poor people, they are born in that context or in that area, poor them, wow, life is so hard and it's really a lot of suffering, you know, poor country or poor context of life and a lot of suffering. Then you don't realize and wonder, but that exactly would be, as everything is karma, that in the previous life they did these kind of wrong things, or they had the wrong intention and the wrong actions. But basically, like if you commit suicide to give up and thinking that you get out of it, in some ways you get out of it in this life, yes, but then you would be born in a much worse environment, and that would be exactly one of those. situation, for example, where you would be born in a very, very difficult context with a lot of suffering that makes other people, if not at what we call the lower realm of existence, so you could actually even be reborn as an animal, again, and a very suffering animal. You know, you have some animals who are born in a very good context and they are spoiled because of the owners or whatever, or the context they are in nature. And some others, you know, have a very, very bad context too. You know, some animals is suffering from the beginning to the end. So it's all related like that to karma. Anyway, I'm not going to make this video too much of an explanation of that, but yeah, so one thing is to commit suicide, or just as I meant, the main expression is you have to reach rock bottom to bounce. And many people have that, and that's why in one way, as much as it doesn't feel good for sure, when you are in that phase of almost reaching rock bottom in whatever context, sometimes it's what it takes, and then there is a rebound, and then the rebound becomes quite positive. So then you have some clarity, some awakening to some things, and then totally, yeah, different direction, redirecting your life or whatever, and that's fine. And then it can go for the better, as hopefully most of the time in that situation, because if we have reached rock bottom and rebounds, then that means that you gain some kind of wisdom about life, existence, your situation, and then things can go quite better for the rest of the time. So after reading that, then I read, of course, that Buddhism was also about meditation. I didn't know much about it, but I decided to start to meditate on my own, and just reading the basics of meditation, not knowing better, and coming from the karate Japanese side. So I first thought about the Zen approach. I tried to go to some couple of Zen places, but at once again I was meant to be like in a pure Dharma way, because I felt that some extra things were not necessary. I like to keep it very natural and simple, always the most simple, the most natural. So when I went to a couple of places about Zen practice, Zen Buddhism, there was already some kind of ceremony involved, you know, ritual ceremonies, and it never felt right for me again to have some kind of ceremony or rituals or whatever. I like to keep it simple, so I just wanted to meditate. And of course the basics at the time was famous to say, well, you get an empty mind, so try to, if you get an empty mind, then it's fine. So I just started to practice at home on my own, but it was thanks to the discipline of karate that I had reached already. It helped a lot, and yeah, I was actually getting quite easy in that state of pretty close to empty mind, not thinking anyway, to be able to have many minutes of no mind activity in that sense, or non-thinking. It's not no brain activity, because as long as you are conscious and alive that way, your brain of course is active, but chemically, at least biochemically, because you're alive. But I got already good results, and at the time I already experienced a few special experiences, you could say, as a good sign. What is considered sometimes as a whatever, supernatural things or extra natural things that most people cannot explain, even science. But of course, by experiencing that and having read a bit about it more, by reading more about Buddhism, and suddenly it goes into also the Tibetan Buddhism, which is different, the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. And those guys are known, of course, for those deep level of concentration, meditation that gives the supernatural powers, which is usually, again, the big entertaining part that captures, of course, the Westerner's mind, because that's what is all more sensational, as the typical basic minds are always attracted to what's entertaining and sensational instead of what looks just more simple and boring, even though that simple and boring looking meditation is what will get you into full enlightenment. And it's not about the miracles that you can accomplish or show off, which becomes an hindrance that way. But anyway, so I had a few experiences, and yeah, I became very aware, again, even more aware, and thus too aware about what this world is. So I became even more detached. At least it was good that I didn't get too much emotional attachment anymore to this society, to the family and everything, which saved me a lot of drama and trouble compared to most. But yeah, that deeper awareness gave a very good sense of clarity, or what should be my main values in life. And then through the practice, exactly, from within, without knowing or having read about it, many things came up in my mind, very many clear truths, which ultimately I read afterwards as being Buddhist truths, part of the ultimate truth. So again, it was just confirming that I was on the right path. And then actually I was eager to teach that as a teenager, right? Of course, I didn't know better. And as I meant, with my meditation at home, it was easy to have a quiet, calm mind, not thinking for long periods, because also being still young, there's not as much experience of life with memories and other experiences that can start to clutter your mind, that sticks with you for the rest of your life, which in that way makes people sometimes age not better, because you just gather baggage from your life experience instead of managing to get rid of it, like through meditation. You just accumulate, and that's why you part of the senility and not being able to sleep properly and everything. But anyway, but that is also to confirm that there was a reason that I was born on turning of the wheel of Dhamma, full moon night, and that's why Dhamma clearly had become part of my life. I will say that then afterwards, because so much happened so young in a culture that's really not Buddhist at all, and then all my knowledge and the eagerness to share that knowledge that was so true and meaningful, then I kind of dropped the idea of sharing. So then I went on with kind of a regular life after that, just the way it was supposed to be, with strong, pressure from the system, from the family, from everything, and not feeling any support from, let's say, the maybe small Buddhist community out there. Didn't encounter any, but again, everything is karma, so it was just meant to make me build resilience that way, and on my own, to confirm by myself all these things. But I went on to have a different life than the normal way that most cultures want. When you become an obedient citizen, and you start to find supposedly your career path or whatever to become a good slave, a good modern slave, and yeah, find your field, working area, become a worker, good obedient worker, and create a family, which of course on the other hand helps to get you stuck in the system. Family, kids, career, that's it. So, there are some famous quotes from some people around that, or some comedian. But already being too aware of what the system was about and how wrong that is actually, and going against nature and natural laws, nature's law, universal laws, then yeah, I was already meant to go the other way, to be able to be a rebel. But I had already that awareness, and for example, I won't. I will be still grateful to have chosen the scientific path during that school time and university time, as I studied geology in university, which is basically known as earth science. But actually, as earth science is good because you actually gather all the sciences together, right? And that actually helped me on the path later on. I mean, so already in high school, my mind had shifted from that practice, right? So, and I was so much intrigued by the mind, and human behavior, and I was always very observant, which is also a very good quality like that. So I was thinking of studying psychology and wanted to become a psychoanalyst, of course. I was pretty good in philosophy at the time already, as a teenager. I had written a few things also like that, from all those truths that came from within and that align with some philosophical quotes that were already known. But at the same time, science was popular, and I had a scientific mind, so I had both sides. And at the time, the way was to go into science. That was the future, and job opportunities and everything. And philosophy or psychology was kind of a bit for the losers, at least in my culture, in the system at the time. So I studied more science, but ultimately, of course, I had already my karma from the Buddhist values, from introspection, spirituality, spiritually inclined, at the same time as I developed the scientific knowledge. And exactly that combination of both really helped me to reach quite far. In some situations, whatever I experienced during meditation, then I could connect it to a scientific knowledge, and that helped instantly to clarify or take down one kind of barrier or hindrance and move along instantly. So the same way as practicing Goenka Vipassana, mainly lately, for 12 years now, when you listen to his discourses, he makes the references to the science, right? And the scientific knowledge for the structure of an atom, molecules, biochemistry, and everything. And so I could experience that both ways, from what you experience within yourself, practicing meditation, and the scientific knowledge that supports that or explains some things. And so at the time I also had experienced that quite a bit. And at university, actually, I went to ask some question to my physics teacher. But again, I got turned away pretty quick, even though my way to question things of physics was right, because some things start to get proven that way now, only with modern physics right now. with the latest technology that they use, like the Hadron Collider and everything like that, particle accelerator and stuff. But that's the same again. It's that very narrow mind of scientists who think they know or have the means, and they have to use those huge technology, very modern technology, to try to figure out things as far as the structure of matter, basically the ultimate of matter and the universe. But when you become a deep meditator, the proper way, you will experience that within yourself. We are matter, that body is matter, material, molecules, you are full of atoms. So the point and what we can mean by very deep meditation, which is like deep level of concentration, then you will experience within yourself the structure of matter, to the point of the structure of an atom and the subatomic particles that we can refer to also in Buddhism, which I can relate to the quarks and anti-quarks like that. Anyway, everything becomes clear. But in that sense, this is like the latest modern science, technology, physics. But somebody 2,500 years ago, only by meditating, introspection within himself, had figured all that. And he used words that basically are the equivalent of what those modern scientists use. Except that he knows better because he experienced it within himself. So it was very clear, and he has the experience, the ultimate. Both, and again that's another famous quote also in the old civilizations, especially like the Inca civilization, or like Central South American old ones, and other ones about as micro as macro, and everything is like that in existence. As much as you can call it duality, and yeah, in many ways we mean that this existence, as an existence, is duality. It's always a polar things and interaction between two ways, but at the end it becomes one. It's the one thing, it's existence, it's the universe. But then in that sense, so you experience within yourself the structure of matter, the structure of an atom, subatomic particles, and then you also become aware and experience the structure of the universe, which is actually what makes a difference with what we call the levels of absorption, or basically the deeper level of concentration, which we call samadhi. When you practice samadhi, you go very, very deep concentration, and then you experience that within yourself. But then we consider that there are 4 lower levels and 4 higher levels, and the 4 lower levels are called rupa jhanas, which means material levels, and the 4 higher levels are called arupa jhanas, so the immaterial level. And that's exactly the difference between the lower ones still being in the material world, and so in the body, and you experience the body at different levels, and you can go to the latest, the higher, the end of the 4th level, the 4th jhana, where you experience the material matter, your body, to the subtlest level, which is those subatomic particles. And then you can transition to the number 5 jhana of the immaterial level, arupa jhanas. And the way they are defined, they have names for those, and actually they are pretty explanatory for what you experience. But that's exactly also that transition when you go from 4th to 5th, then you separate the mind from the body. Exactly because, as it means, you leave the material level and only become the immaterial level, which is the mind only, and not connected to the body anymore. So basically that's a stage, and if you are in those higher levels where anybody your body becomes very still, of course, and then anybody could do anything to your body at that stage, and you don't feel anything because you have disconnected both. And in that sense, when you reach that level, as it is defined in the number 5, expansion of space, and then number 6, expansion of consciousness, then because you have disconnected the mind from the body to be narrowed down and always tied to that thing, which is more narrow on the ground scale of thing and universe, then you allow the mind to expand. It's freed now from this tie down to the matter, and then you can start to get in touch with the things at the universal scale. But then you moved exactly in that transition from 4th to 5th, you moved from being in connection to the smallest, subtlest particles of matter into the macro of the universe scale thing, to the higher level until the number 8 jhana. And then in that sense, number 8 jhana is still not enlightenment. Basically you would say that then when you finish number 8, and if you still manage to move to the next step, then next step is nirvana, nibbana, the enlightenment level. And that's why, yeah, there is this whole thing now, and especially again new generations, new age mind of all those people who pretend to be spiritual and anything, but it's a lot of ego trip, and as an expression has become popular, to talk about the spiritual ego. Many online now, of course, access to many things online makes some people think that they have reached anything just because they read something online, and then they intellectualize it, and in their mind they think that they understand what it is or what it means and how it is, and then they decide that they are like this, which is a typical thing, especially in the Western cultures with that huge ego that way. Intellectual cultures, because we have a bit of education, and then afterwards the mind starts to get used to think that it knows enough, or that it has the means to know. But anyway, so many people mention higher level of achievement and the word enlightenment, but of course it's very easy for some to see that they are so not enlightened. Of course, they haven't experienced at all nirvana, nibbana, or enlightenment. But that's just how it is, and it's part of the culture now, and in the whole, of course, social media, internet, everything, what it's popular now. So there's a lot of need to prove and need to show off online, and the social media, and being popular, how many followers and everything, so how many likes. So as for a few it becomes a source of income, and then there is the whole connection to making business with spirituality. So in some places I have written about that, about the business of spirituality, and it's a big thing, of course, nowadays. Again, from people who are very good speakers, very eloquent, and they have read a few things, and they mean that they understand intellectually, and that's why they are good at repeating or putting in words things, and it sounds really cool with a bit of charisma, and it carries a lot of followers because it sounds good and cool, but and then it becomes good business. But these people are still not the real deal, of course. They haven't experienced actually what they talk about, but they were good at reading, gathering, or listening some informations, and then retranscript it or repeat it with the proper way or eloquence, and that works for most people who don't know better. But anyway, that's just the way it is now in this society, just the same as I can say I was fortunate being still in that generation, and what I've experienced when also part of the awareness of the system and what it was doing ultimately is meant to go at the opposite or then destroy Dharma, the Dhamma way, the Dhamma values and Dhamma teaching. So Dhamma is a word also that some people don't really know, and it can have different meanings, but at the end it becomes the same thing, just different way or different scales. But they are the teaching of the Buddha, but Buddha was teaching the law of nature, the law of the universe. So the Dhamma is nature, is the law of existence, is the truth, is the ultimate truth of life existence, about everything. And again, from what I said earlier, the agenda of any system with the people to make them the right kind of modern, well-conditioned slaves, just as good Pavlovian dogs, right? It's all about conditioning, and they want you to just be good Pavlovian dogs, to respond the way you're supposed to the conditioning as a conditioned reflex, without the ability to be aware of that and the steps that go on in your mind that way. So good, obedient, modern slaves of the system, that is the opposite of Dhamma teaching and the Dharma. The Dharma and ultimately becoming enlightened, another definition of it, even if we always can say that there's no word to describe the beyond mind and matter, that which is what Nirvana is, which is what enlightenment is, beyond the mind and matter. Yes, there is that agenda in place meant to not allow people to have access to the inner world, the introspection and true spirituality, discovering their own nature and the real meaning of life and existence. And rather, that's why everything is done to keep your attention outside, captivated outside, and into materialism and consumerism, which is the opposite. And so you become a good subject of the system, and you can't actually, as much as you think many times that you make your own decision, your own choices, it is conditioned by the system, the context. And that's the whole purpose of that system. So, yes, a lot is done to destroy Dhamma, to take away the Dhamma from, or the access to Dhamma for most humans, because then you would figure out the real meaning of life, existence. You would become a very strong, independent individual with less conditioning, and that goes against the interest. That's also the other part, and I became aware of that already as a teenager, so that's why I was already rebelling against the system, which was not welcome, of course. And that's how you understand. And just some other quotes from famous people have been around like that, basically like you can't really speak the truth anymore in this world, especially now with the woke culture, which is another aspect also, and especially in the North American culture, of course, as being at the forefront now of that madness, mad evolution of human society, more degenerate, and exactly the one quote that I think is a very, very good one, both from also the psychology side of things, which is, as I mean in general, that's why I don't support modern psychology for what it's supposed to do, or psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, psychiatry. Anyway, it's just to make you fit in that system, crazy system of mad human beings. So it's not to make you balanced or healthy in the mind, but it's the other way, just to make you fit in that. So Krishnamurti, and the famous quote of Krishnamurti is, it is no sign of health, you can put in quote in between, mental health, it is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And yes, that sums up basically what's happening in this world, which was also a bit like that at the time of the Buddha, of course. Again, it was not ideal. Same, humans have been humans since the beginning, and that's what it is. To become enlightened is to transcend all that anyway, so you transcend being human, because you go beyond the mind and matter to be done with any type of existence, finished, no more reincarnation. Just the energy just dissolves. I refer a bit to that in my book on the last page also, as far as again what physics, science is trying to explain about something in the universe, but I'm not going to get into that right now. Maybe I could make it in a separate video, but anyway. But this is meant to basically tell a bit more about myself and what I think, where I come from, what I am about. So my life is definitely about Dhamma, sharing pure Dhamma, deep Dhamma like that, at a more advanced level. Is good, at least for people who are truly, genuinely interested in Dhamma and progress on the path that way. So not for the superficial ones, ego tripping, who just like to debate or argue about things to satisfy their intellectual ego, whatever. So, and there was a reason why I was born on that full moon night of Dhammachakra, the turning of the wheel of Dhamma. And in one way, people would say, you're lucky with this, you're lucky with that. Another thing, there's no luck in life. Everything is karma. And so, yes, as one of the expression goes, which some people don't like because they think their life is not fun, but you always get what you deserve in life. Basically, it's because you always get what you asked for, whether you're aware of it or not. And that comes from your previous karma and from what you do in this life. I made a little audio also on karma, and many people misconceive that. So, and they mix it with destiny, but it's not the same. There's no destiny like that. Karma, in one way, yes, controls a bit what's coming in your life. Everything is cause and consequences, but you can also always, at any time, any moment, affect your karma. And that's why you can change the course of, in one way, compared to what it was supposed to do or to be if you didn't do anything. So you have a karma that already decides many things in general to various levels. Then if you just do nothing and you are a kind of a happy-go-lucky cruise along life, then the karma will go on the same, depending. And if you have more on the good side of karma, you have okay life. If you are more on the bad side of karma, you have a very suffering life, like in those contexts I was referring to earlier, born in a place of war or difficult poverty, and where people are very violent to each other or whatever. Just depends. But anybody in that context, as long as you have a kind of balanced mind that can function with a minimum of awareness, you can always try to become conscious of certain things like that and make decision and direct, orientate your mind which direction you want. And ultimately it becomes that. And I sum up also the teaching, I will give it now here, the basic sum up of the whole teaching actually of Dhamma. We know it in one side, as we come from originally, the origin of existence that way is from ignorance. Ignorance, avijja in Pali, then goes with moha. Moha is delusion. Because of ignorance, you have a delusional mind. You are not aware, you are not very conscious, and then out of moha also together, because they make, again, kind of duality in life. You have lobha dosa, which is summed up many times as greed and aversion or hate, but it encompasses more. But it's basically what we call the mind defilement. So on one side, it's basically ignorance, which goes with, of course, delusion, and goes with all the defilement of the mind, the bad aspect of the mind, which is all negative. And most humans, of course, have that, and then some humans have more of the Lobha side, more of the Dosa side, and some have both, quite a bit. But it's all the bad aspect and the bad intention of the mind, malevolent, and yeah. So one is greed, lust, envy, jealousy, and hatred, anger, violence. Anyway, all of these things. So it's kind of the bad side. And if your mind is most of the time leaning that way, then you will just get worse and worse karma in this life and in the next lives. Then you have the other side, which is the good mindset, which would be wisdom, and that's what this life is about, and what the path is about, is to go from ignorance to wisdom at the end. And wisdom, a wise way, a wise person, a wise mind, of course it becomes very positive, and it's only on the positive side, and it focuses on the 4 highest values in that way, which is metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, and it's translated most of the time as loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And I tell you right there, equanimity is the key to enlightenment, because it goes with the notion of anatta, which is no me, no self, which is of course the one ultimate notion in Buddhism. When you understand properly that there's no self, after you experience deep meditation, go to the core of your being, nature, experience the core and the subtlest level of matter and the mind, then you'll realize automatically, naturally, that there is no self, ultimately, no I, no me. And both ways, that will give you the ultimate notion of equanimity with everything after in life. Then you can take everything with a peaceful mind and no attachment. But at the same time, you need equanimity to get there, to not be attached already to things, not to have that ego that feels sorry for itself, or like to have an opinion or idea of anything or everything. But stay humble, always. Humility, the best human quality, goes together with those values. So yeah, the wisdom, the humility, the positive mind, which has loving kindness for every being, compassion, and sympathetic joy, at the opposite of Lobha, the greed, the envy, the jealousy. Then you have sympathetic joy, for rejoice for other people's good things or luck, you could say, or when they're happy, you're happy for them. Again, it's always the difference between me, all about me, or about the others, and the good for the others, and the good for the world, any being. So, and equanimity at the end is an ultimate notion, but is necessary to reach the highest level. So at the end, it becomes the key to the final level. And in that way, so in one way you have the bad karma with the bad values, the mind defilement, negative, and the good karma with the good values, the highest values, for the good, the positive. But then again, equanimity is actually the true middle path. Again, many people have their own concept of what the middle path means, and many people misuse that word to justify their shortcomings and their own weaknesses and their own way to do some things, the lazy way, lazy mind, and the weak way. But it's not that. The middle path is exactly that, is equanimity, meaning you are also not affected and not attached to the bad or the good. You just stay centered and become a witness, like many spiritual also have said. You just observe properly and become a witness, humble witness. You just learn, take in, accept, surrender to reality, of course, to what is in the moment. Eckhart Tolle has mentioned a few things like that in a good way. What's the point to resist the reality of this moment? It's happening anyway. You cannot do anything about it. That's quite ignorant, of course, to fight or be angry or resist what's happening right now. It's happening. There's nothing you can do. But you can become wise by find the truth in it or learn the lesson from it to grow, to mature up. So both sides, the bad and bad karma, because of bad consequences, right? So those bad mindset makes you have bad reaction, negative reaction, which gives bad karma, cause and consequence. The good mind, better karma. But still, you create karma one way or the other, means that you keep the cycle going. Of course, better karma, positive karma is better, but at the end it keeps going. And that's what keeps you in samsara, the cycle of rebirth, because you can be attached to both. If you become attached to good and I want good life, I want good karma, then you are just attached. So that still actually has to do with lobha, with desire, with greed, desire. So at the end, the ultimate teaching is equanimity in the middle, not attached to any way, not attached to self, to anything, to any consequence. Then you don't react, then you stop creating karma that way. And by stopping creating karma at the end and erasing then all the past karma that way, because you made space for the old to come up when you don't create new, then you can become fully enlightened, and that's when you end the cycle and finish samsara. No more rebirth, no more reincarnation in any form of existence anyway. So then everything is done, and that's kind of the ultimate teaching summed up right here. Dhammacakka. Then here is a sum up of the Dhamma teachings, Buddha teachings. Of course, what I explain, and one famous expression in Buddhism, Buddha teaching and Dhamma, is anicca, dukkha, anatta. For those who have heard that expression, I mentioned anatta, which is again the ultimate, as becoming aware and what we call the right view, that there is no self, no me, no I, ultimately, in the ultimate reality, versus this apparent, relative, virtual reality that many people believe to be reality, but it's like a dream actually. It's not the ultimate reality. You created that kind of avatar and virtual mind and body, and you're very attached to it, so that's why you experience what you experience and create karma around it. But at the end, the expression of anicca, dukkha, anatta, and it goes together as dukkha is the suffering. That's why the ultimate teaching and Dhamma teaching is to erase the suffering, which you can experience and reach when you have understood properly from within as an experience, not only intellectually, that there is no me, no I, no self. Why? Because everything is temporary. That's why nothing and nobody is worth to be attached to. Whether you've close family, you so-called loved one that you like to privilege in many situations, again from your ego, when you say, oh, I don't want to do this, only for my loved one I do this or this, then it's already wrong. It's not a good mind. It's definitely not the higher moral values when you make that separation. And nobody is worth to be attached to as nothing in this very material world where people are so attached to these things, these toys, the whatever, and the body, and when people use the word love, for the things, not even the people, right? But people love this and this thing and this thing and this thing, their thing, my this and my that and my that. So anyway, that's the madness, that's moha, that's completely delusional world. And that's why, I mean, I was going to say that, yeah, you understand that way that it concerns most of the people, most of humans on earth, and that's why so very few people become enlightened actually, because you have to understand the whole delusion of believing in this around as real, and you have also to understand properly the right view, which usually will only happen from experiencing it within, that there is no me, no self, no I that way. Then you can really fully detach from everything, develop that whole equanimity, and from understanding that anything is temporary anyway, nothing is permanent, everything is ephemeral, nothing is worth to be attached to, nobody. But that way only, any type of suffering, of emotional attachment to things, which is ego-based, will disappear, and then the mind will become truly peaceful, in harmony with life and nature and existence. Balanced mind, peaceful mind, stable mind, which again sounds boring to many people who are very attached to this life and the ups and downs of life. Yeah, sure, enjoy your roller coaster, emotional roller coaster life, and you keep being supposedly happy, but then also very sad and angry many times, and up and down, the whole mess. Again, moha, delusion, delusional life, delusional mind. That's just the way it is, and many people are, of course, really attached to that. Just like, was it Jung who said that? Because people don't want to see that truth because they don't want the illusions to be destroyed. So people like to believe in illusions, and that's the system is educating you to do that, to believe in that whole fictitious world, is the fictitious system of supposedly authority in government and the laws. All this is man-made, right? It's nothing to do with nature and natural laws. So that's why it's already crazy. It is a really messed up thing, and creates messed up humans because they educate you in that system and in that belief. And that's why, again, it goes totally against the Dhamma. Anyway, that's about it as a little longer intro on my story and awareness, and meaning to be a proper Dhamma victor, which is the only purpose that I have in my life too. I've had since long time ago, and that time as a teenager, that as I said, I was ready to give up on life. And since then, when I turned around, first I said I would be never depressed anymore, and I was never depressed. I was never feeling down or sad, really sad or down anymore after that, never depressed. And at the same time, I knew that my life would be focused on that path. Then it has been confirmed, and then I went back to proper Vipassana, but 12 years ago, at 42 years old, I guess. One of those January 1st New Year's resolution, I'm going to take a good retreat, because I had also decided to give up on the system completely. Again, not being part of that anymore, not working for money, not totally wrong. So I was like, okay, I'm done. Whatever happens, happens. I leave it to life, to Dhamma, to karma. But then, as people would call me lucky, and there's no luck, because I gave it properly, sincerely, into Dhamma and karma that way, and practiced the proper way, and sincerely, and deeply, with effort and resolution. Then many good things came again. It was the second big stage of my life where I make the switch, the transition, and then many good things came, which in the eyes of many, with envy, they call to be so lucky. But I worked for it, I did the right thing. So the right mindset, the right intention, and the right work, proper work. So then Vipassana has been good, and since my first retreat, we've already also very deep experience, very clear experience, made it clear that the rest of my life is dedicated to Dhamma, for sure. And ideally I would like to have a Dhamma center sometime, which will become also a very proper Dhamma center, in a way of strict or too strict for many, because there is a word around that people say it shouldn't be sectarian, but I see what's happening in many places, both ways, about the people that are welcome but mess around, don't care, don't have the right intention, and on the other hand, the people who are in charge are actually not proper Dhamma people, also the best intention. They have already a corrupt mind, one way or the other, either with values or money or power anyway and stuff. Still a lot of ego. So ideally, if some people feel the energy the right way to support that, as now as a proper Buddhist I only live by donation anyway, but ideally I would like to create a proper Dhamma center that way, pure Dhamma, the real way. And like I said before, and with my original intention many years ago, in between, in my more regular life, of that would be a proper Sangha that way, or creating the right community like that. Again, like, there were many intentional communities around. I've been looking at that for a while, and with the right values, living again in harmony with nature. But you can see that many times those intentional communities don't work in the long run, and there's a reason for that, which is quite obvious to me. And that's why if it's a combination of a proper Dhamma community like that, and people who have the real intention and the conviction about, and the faith, the proper faith in Dhamma, to practice properly, then that's kind of if the possibility happens or the opportunity shows up, then it would be nice to create a proper Dhamma center somewhere as a self-sustaining community, also for food, basically, as the farming part and growing food, so to be self-sustainable, but of course very centered to proper Dhamma, deep practice, serious practice of Dhamma and Dhamma values. We'll see what the future brings. Anyway, so that's all about my story and the background, the awareness, the purpose. Only one main purpose in my life, because after what I've experienced, at some point I was like, and as I mentioned before, I didn't care to die, so I like sometimes to put it in a way of, I'm just patiently waiting for my death now, because I know what's coming after anyway, and I'm in a very good place and very good mindset about that. So it's not a problem, of course. It will be welcome anytime, whether it would come today, tomorrow, in a short term or in a long term, doesn't matter. But in the meanwhile, the only one purpose of my life is to share Dhamma as much as possible to the people who are truly, genuinely interested in that practice, deeper practice and understanding of life, existence, and trying to reach a certain level of awareness of that and peace of mind, the proper way, detaching from the regular values of life and society, the way it is in general. So this is it from my Dhammacakka day today, this time around this year, and I hope it gives a good insight to some people. If anybody have any question, as usual, you can ask any question anytime on my Facebook or as a comment on the YouTube channel. Always available to share more, explain more about Dhamma. That's it. Yeah. Bhavatu Samat Mangalam. May all beings be happy. May all be liberated.